welcome to the Mr. Magpie Show. I am your host, Ben Russell. This week I welcome island entrepreneur Luke Ignace. Luke is from the Bahamas with Haitian ancestry and is a quintessential larger-than-life character. He talks fondly of his Caribbean heritage, but also the stigmas he has observed and experienced both home and abroad. We get a hint of the unique perspectives and visions for change that stood him apart from his friends and family, which ultimately inspired him to seek opportunities for personal growth and creative freedom, as well as implement community-minded professional projects here on the island. We also explore more broadly the pitfalls that modern societies and cultures face when an open social dialogue for collaborating in new ways is buried beneath conventional ideologies, speculating that this can prevent people from imagining a brighter, inclusive future, that in fact we all could have some agency in developing both on a collective level and a personal one too. Feel free to leave a comment and give us some feedback. We're always open to engaging with ways to improve the show for your viewing pleasure. Also, if you find these conversations useful, please show your support by donating a small amount on the Mr. Magpie Patreon page. Every little helps to ensure that time can be allocated as a matter of priority in developing a show for the benefit of all. Without further ado, I hope you enjoyed the discussion.
I was talking to the mic saying, okay, here we are, just taking a sip of the double-double. Well, that was more of a gulp. But, yeah, man.
Oh my god, it's recording. I look like a pauper because you got two Timothy Hortons cups and I've got... Okay.
Do you have one cup at all?
Ooh.
Is there nothing inside it? H2O, hello.
H2O. Are you mocking me?
Oh yes, of course, it's a little bit. I spoke to my brother the other day, and it was the first time I spoke to him in 10 years, and he was losing his Creole, and he was born and raised, he spent time in Haiti, but nobody in the culture is anywhere. Haiti's such a poor country that people don't make it out of Haiti and then start lives inside Virginia, you know what I mean? It's not that kind of setup. So countries like the Bahamas have a lot of Haitians and all the Caribbean around it, right? Because that's where they can get to, because they leave Haiti on ships or boats or on planes, right? A little bit of money. They try to start a life somewhere else, right? The case of my parents was similar because they left Haiti to go to the Bahamas, and for that purpose, you can't really, like I said, find Haitians way out here in Canada, for example, who actually wanna spend time with you or talk to you or else like that even, right? If you find one family, they're probably here because they're trying to get away from Haitians. You know what I'm saying, right? So it's it's if you meet
that's
them,
interesting.
It's right. If you meet them, it's less than likely that you'd even be trying to talk to them because, like I said, Haiti is. There's no education, right? There's lots of ignorance in Haiti. There's lots of poverty in Haiti, right?
Right. Okay.
And people don't really have that heightened sense of well-being or character. Those things don't even matter because they're trying to worry about different stuff.
So it's not escaping the culture; it's escaping the current economic climate that sort of doesn't allow them to flourish as an individual. Yeah. So, but that must be pretty difficult for somebody who recognizes that. They have to move forward as a human being. Mm-hmm. They have to take a step to look at different opportunities available to them, but without realizing that there's a certain divorce of your culture in that process. Mm. There's a divorce of because when you're in it every day, those are the security, the good feet. That's what gives you the sort of sustenance. So I can imagine that being really tough.
Yeah, it is
for someone who it dawns on them that this is a very different world.
I never heard that term. I think you should say that more often. Or just put it somewhere. Moving is a divorce of your culture. And then you're coming into another culture. You're marrying into this new culture, right?
Yeah.
Because you get a citizenship and everything,
Yeah.
And I was talking to a friend about this actually. I was talking about man, doesn't it make sense that when you move to these countries like Canada, the moment you become permanent residents, how much help becomes available to you? It's they're saying when you become loyal to us, when you marry us, you can reap the benefits, So it's but before that, and it also shows you how animalistic we are still, it's saying you're still associated with this tribe of people. Yeah. You're still a Haitian, you're not a Canadian.
But you should probably forget that
now. But you see what I'm saying though, right? You see, no, but for real, if you think about why they say you have to wait until you become a permanent resident, you can be in a country for 5-6 years, bro. And you can't put that on a piece of paper. I was here for 5-6 years. I deserve the benefits now. Or I've done this here. Yeah. I deserve benefits. When you become a resident here, then you get these benefits.
But that's the beautiful thing about how culture is catalyzed through an individual and then expressed. Because no matter what sort of system that you've been implanted to or to move to, They can have sort of expectations of how you assimilate, for example. But all the things that we hold dear in terms of storytelling come from things like music, food, cuisine, and that's how immigrants express themselves. They express themselves in those remits, so they don't lose it. It's there for themselves, and it's easily adopted by like the traditional system that they're coming into, because it's a form of storytelling everyone understands, and there's a harmonious and rhythmic aspect to that you can tap into.
It's very human, you know, because if you make food for somebody, right, all these things, you're singing for somebody, you're making music for somebody. These are things that come from like very vulnerable places, like, or to eat somebody else's food that they give to you, right? Like talking more like animalistically, it's like that's not something you just do, right? You can't just come to another culture and just like making you food and just give it to somebody. It's like, if you think about it, right, we're like two people. You don't know me, I don't know you. I bring food for you to eat. You know what I mean? It's like most people in different cultures be like, you know, they tell you don't eat food from people you don't know. You know, like that's big inside Haiti, for example, right? And that comes from like a lot of reasons, right? Both like
interesting.
Yeah, both like because you know something could be done to the food, but obviously because like it's Haiti and like you know things are crazy over there and you just can't eat anything. You know? So food to me is so intimate, you know, like bringing food to the table, like sharing music with somebody and singing. Like what if you're a bad singer? You're revealing parts of yourself that like are people can attack them. You know, people can critique them, and these are things that are like good to you. I mean, these are things that are good. These are things that are like close to you, you know, and you see them as good. And if people attack them, then they like you feel vulnerable. You feel like, man, I exposed such like this is my culture.
Because they've never been attacked before.
Exactly.
In that sense. They wouldn't be attacked if you were home. If you were expressing yourself in the same way.
And you're aware like you're in a different area. You're aware like, you know, this could be a shared mindset. You know what I mean? Like how's this going to affect you now, right? Like,
I mean, I think the key thing here is as well that maybe the idea of being attacking that this expression comes from a place that there's an intent behind it to cause harm to me and my belief or my way of thinking, when that's not the case at all. But we've already talked that it's a pure expression of that person's values through culture, but it's not not necessarily a dictate of that this is my way, so you incorporate it or listen to it and take it into consideration as being something that you have is somehow missing from your belief system. It's in its beautiful form and it's in its base form is just an expression, like it's like artistry from a perspective of someone like say Van Gogh, who with the tumultuous mind, turbulent mind that he had, he had a creative train of thought. It was an expressive train of thought, which didn't come across as being typifying a particular gender, a political standpoint, ideological standpoint. Those are things that maybe be able to extract it for his work if you look at it as a whole. But it was a pure act of expression, artistic expression.
Of him. You know,
of him.
Of what was within him. Yeah, he wasn't trying to associate himself with anything or person. I mean, other than that, like you said, what was normal to him, what was exposed to him, right? Did he paint from his mind, or was his painting actually like things that he saw, like, or Van Gogh?
That's a good point. Well, if you look at a lot of the content of his work, it was objective criteria that anyone could relate to. So like the sunflowers, the haystacks, those are the things that come to mind. So, but painted in such a way that you could see it through this lens of abstraction that you can't relate, that you can't. You get a shade of, but a shade of his perspective, because of the way that he he makes that form on the painting with the brushstrokes, the colors, and that side of things.
You know what stuff that always like amazed me about though? When I see Van Gogh, I always think like different artists and stuff. You know, like I think he's somebody who trained himself in painting long enough to be able to paint well to make it attractive, right? Yeah. But at the same time, like, isn't every human being capable of producing works like Van Gogh's? It's like we were talking about this, right? Like technical skills vs creativity, right? You know, it's like you need to learn the technical skills, and then you need to like awaken your own creativity to make something new. Yeah, you know, it's like you need both. You can't just be a creative because then your drawings look really bad, right? Like, or
well, like, yeah, I mean, then they can. I guess they become like overly abstract to the point where and in the contemporary day and age, we're all sort of wish-washy and about sort of what's presented to us, like this idea of postmodernism where everything is interpretable. There's no like real objective fabric to our existence, as long as we're actors in in the universe, events that unfold, objects that we see are interpreted by the individual and different from every individual, and that's a unique perspective. And that's the problem, because you can create a work of art and it can be interpreted a million different ways. But what truth are you extracting from that, from the individual, from their perspective?
I mean, that's shared belief, right? Like you said, we live in a universe where like there's not a meaning to our existence. Basically, you were saying.
Well, there's no. It's like the post God ethos of like modernity, where which was like pioneered by the philosophies of Nietzsche, the death of God, where his idea that God ran its course because it could no longer navigate the complexities of modern day human interactions and the way that we feel and correspond to the world and how we perceive it. So it gave birth to this sort of like almost like atheistic tendency to interpret everything
with New Age thinking,
with like see multiple interpretations or truths in something.
I have a question about that. I have a question about this. I think as people, we will continuously, and like people will always find reason to disagree with something, right? But like, how about finding reasons to agree instead, right? Like I find, especially with faith and belief and stuff and all these, when it comes down to this, it's like it's always like, oh, but what if this, and that can't be if this, and like people are always working to disprove. You know what I mean? I find like people search so much more for faults in the things that they don't want to believe in than for truth in it.
Right.
So how do you shift that how do you shift that in people, right? How do you shift and make people say, okay, instead of like looking for all the fault as to why this can't be, because you're just going to keep looking. And even if I present something to you that, if I present something to somebody who's adamantly against not believing, then they'll just look for another fault. Just like, and it's the same thing in relationships. It's like, even if you're good to somebody, and you be good to them, if they aren't into it, like they're going to look for another fault the moment you've corrected one, right? And it's just going to be a constant process instead of loving you unconditionally, which is in the faith as well, right? Christian faith. People won't do that, So I think like at the end of the day, if somebody's heart isn't open to learning something new or being challenged, then it's almost like meaningless to even like talk to them about like or share something to them that you're hoping they'd consider.
Well, that's a really interesting perspective point there about establishing what actually means something to you, or understanding what rewards you, your beliefs, part of the belief system that you have rewards you, rather than throwing it out the window because everyone else seems to be criticizing sort of ideological perspectives. So it's like, well, what aspects of that are true to me because they make me feel better about life. They give me an element of meaning. If you take that away and you then just try and become this open-minded like individual who just understands tries to collate every perspective, then that's mentally stressful. That can cause anxiety and like deep lying issues with the way that you think about that. So, and you can only really do that as an individual. No one can tell you that what this is true about your belief system or a belief system. Yeah,
exactly. At the end of the day, right? Like faith is like that's what it is, right? Faith in what you
believe. I guess that it. Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's like, and we all have faith in different stuff, right? But you need to be true to yourself. You need to know what you are willing to like sacrifice in order to like have this belief as well. Right? It's like it's so much more to it, and that's why you can't put it on somebody else, because somebody isn't willing to make the sacrifices that you are. It's like. And even if the sacrifices that they're asking you to make it are the same, it's like, what's at stake when you sacrifice these things different for me and you, So it's like all this comes into account, and that's why you can't just be like, here it is. This is how it is. Like, this is just like my way of life. This is what I do. It worked out for me, and through knowing me, our interactions, if you want to pick up stuff and you were noticing, oh man, this guy's philosophy, like this way of life is actually, I like that. You know what I mean? Like this is changing me. Then I think it's okay. All right, would you like to adopt it or let them adopt it on their own? But I wouldn't. Just coming back to it, I wouldn't push my belief or share or think that my philosophy is like set in stone, like the right way. Like even if I do, I wouldn't tell somebody that. You know what I mean? I wouldn't. I prefer to show them. I prefer to show them and let them.
You've been in PEI for how long now?
4 years.
4 years.
4 years, yeah. Well, 4.5. something like that.
From the Bahamas.
From the Bahamas, yeah.
So tell me about like the town that you grew up with, and
man.
the people that you
Yeah.
hold dear to you, not just family, but like the community. And what was that like? Give us a flavor.
Yeah, man. So I grew up in Freeport, Grand Bahama Island. It was interesting growing up there. You know, I grew up through a corner called Little Haiti, actually, because it was filled with Haitians. A lot of Haitians who left Haiti would come to the Bahamas, and the community was started there basically. And most of the community through this corner was Haitians. And during this time when I was growing up, people really like, it was like a little China. You know what I mean? Like how they have in different places, like in New York and stuff, but it was Haitians instead. And people didn't like Asians back in the day, so I grew up with a lot of like race on race racism. So it was like different black people from like the Bahamas, like not enjoying the presence of so many Haitians in their country. And that was like, you know, the poverty that they bring. That was the lifestyle that they bring. There was a lot of things that people just didn't like, right? Like the aesthetics of the country, I guess, was kind of like being lowered, so they thought, by Haitians because of their lifestyle and the way they did things, which wasn't the case. You know, Haitians had a lot of culture, they had a lot of love, they had a lot of heart, and I think that if the country just kind of welcomed them in and saw what they were bringing and kind of fostered and built on, I think it would have been a really, really great thing for the Bahamas. You know, because like the Bahamas is underpopulated and all, right? They need people to actually break into different industries and all that, but they didn't have that mindset. They just had this mindset of there are these different people coming in who have different cultures, speak different language, and we don't want them here. And so I grew up with people telling me like, you know, like, yeah, you're Haitian. Haitian ass. You can beep that out, Brett. I don't know if you can put that out there or not, or whatever else like that. But that was never. That always lingered with me. It always shaped me as a person. Because then I was revealed to like racism already, just like, but amongst my own people, right? It's interesting, man, because I'm telling you, you got people coming from the States to the Bahamas. Like, you know, we live in a tourist economy. There are people coming from like Canada all the time. There are people coming from, because we're a part of the CARICOM Alliance, right? There are people coming from like the Bahamas, and they're all coming to the Bahamas. But here are the Haitians, and they're being oppressed because they're coming from Haiti. So it's like, wow, man, like we're black. We're black. It's not like we're any different. But anyway, that's where I was born and raised, and yeah, man, I spent most of my time there. Both my parents are from Haiti. They live in the Bahamas now, and I come from a family like 10 people, right? And I got siblings like in the U.S. I got siblings in Canada and Montreal. I'm here in PEI, and I guess that's a bit about me being here in Canada right now. Yeah, but I was born and raised.
Yeah, it's interesting hearing you, because you immediately go into talking about the broader context of being an individual living in the Bahamas, and the influences and how the people have, and somewhat, but what I'm hearing is that there's been a kind of veil pulled over them, in the sense that how do you sort of expand away from those norms that have become like become memories. They're now memory. They're not even memories. They're just incorporated into who you are as a person living in the Bahamas. How does that? How would you change? How would you promote an idea of something else other than that existence or belief?
100%, man. Like after being in Canada now, you know, and like being in a different culture where you see so much diversity and seeing how they welcome people, and obviously, like, you know, even here in PEI, man, like there's people who don't want like certain individuals here, right? Like there's a lot of issues in PEI as well that kind of blows under the rug kind of thing. But in the Bahamas, what I'd say is just like have an association that welcomes people. You know, maybe get Haitian people that are actually citizens in the country to have established like businesses and stuff like that, and get them like, you know, opening up like newcomers association for here in Canada, right? They have this place where people can come to and kind of talk to them and just kind of like, you know, share history, share stories, create groups, teach them English. Like none of those services were there for people when they came from Haiti to the Bahamas. You know, like the government never thought to think like, yo, there's room for capable Haitians who are coming here. You know what I mean? Maybe we should create an organization where we can actually educate these people and give them an opportunity to like go out and do something that didn't exist. It was like, you came here, you're a Haitian, we don't want you here.
Well, maybe that comes from what we were saying before. This idea, if you understand that when somebody is moved from their place of culture, their predominant place of culture, they're going to bring that as a form of expression in some ways. So if you enable that for them, if you start the day that they land, or they're within that new scope, well, you say, well, you look at ideas for them to be able to express their own culture through those various remits and entertain it. Because once you galvanize it, once the individuals become empowered by that, then they become a better individual in terms of being able to understand how to network to fit into the network of the place that they've moved into. Like economically, options become more viable because there's an acceptance. It's given you a sense of being, a meaning of being there at that time. Oh, excellent! You mean I can do this? I can say this. I can play this. It's a position of positivity rather than one where you have to grapple with the divorce of something that was meaningful to you to somehow change yourself overnight to be successful right from the get-go in this new world, this new terrain.
Do you know like how the world's kind of set up for like black people, whereas, you know, if you come into a space and you look black, you know what I mean? You know what I'm going to say when you look black? I'm not saying like black is a bad thing at all when I say that now, don't get me wrong. What I say is like when you look ghetto, when you look like, or what they perceive to be ghetto. And when you come in and, you know, you got this character, like, you know, you're kind of menacing or whatever, like that. You walk into a building and it's just like, oh, this person's black from the ghetto, da, da, da. It's like in the Bahamas, that's what it is. It's like for Haitians, it's like when you walk in and you're a Haitian, it's like, oh, this person's a Haitian. You know what I mean? And unless you're educated and you can prove yourself, then you fall into, this is another uneducated Haitian in the Bahamas who's come here and, you know what I mean, can't do this properly, da, da, da. Like, it's almost like, you know what I mean? It's almost like them taking a cycle of hate that was in racism, like from the past, from white people in the past and racism, and then them learning it and then doing it to Haitian people. It's man, like, yo, it's actually so bad. And yeah, man, that's
because it's easy to get stuck in that story that you've told yourself without realizing what impact you're having by your actions and then how they're perceiving that, because it becomes a collective collective action.
Routine, you know.
So
like,
you see that immediate alienation from both sides.
Exactly,
That's
man.
interesting.
You know, like, you ever watch Green Book?
What? Sorry.
Green Book.
No.
Green Book. It's the movie about this guy. He's like a driver. He's a white guy, and he's driving this pianist across, like, I don't know, somewhere like up into, like, you know, in the States where all the racist people are and stuff like that, man. Like Kentucky, like that area. You know what I mean? Like Texas and all that kind of stuff around there. And he's telling him in one of the scenes, like, you know, he can't go back to his own people because they don't accept him. And he can't, when he goes to these meetings to play pianos, this grand pianist, like these meetings for white people, like, they don't accept him. They just want to hear his piano. So it's like he doesn't have a tribe to go to. Because, like, he's this talented, smart guy who plays the piano and this and that, and he doesn't sound like a normal black person. So he can't go back to the black people he was with. And he also can't make room and find peace with the white people because they just don't want him because he's black. So he's trapped because of his talents in a place where he has no community. And that was such an interesting perspective, because that's a big issue for a lot of black people too. Because it's like, when you reach a level of success or education, or if you're just a bit different, and if you don't fit into the black community, then like you're kind of like the albino, you know what I mean? Like the one who came out kind of strange, and then and then the other community doesn't accept you either. So it's like and I know why they did it in the movie, because honestly, man, it was a time in my life where I kind of shared that feeling as well, right?
Yeah.
And it's just tough, man, because you want to be a part of your community, but you don't want to remain in the level of lifestyle sometimes associated with it. You know what I mean? Like, I was watching this documentary called like The Godfather on Netflix, right? And there was a scene when a famous singer came on stage, and they call him the president hugger, right? Or the white hugger or something like that, because he was hugging a president, you know what I mean? And they laughed at him, and they're like, hey, man, you're a black man on TV hugging a white man, what are you doing? Back in the day. And they freaking out. I'm like, he was like, I will not, he said, I will admit, you know what I mean, that I did what I did. He said, but I will not allow you to not let me address myself as a black man, because that's what I am, you know what I mean? And then he sang I Gotta Be Me. And everybody cried in the crowd, bro, and all this different stuff like that. He was just basically saying, like, man, look, like, we live in a world where you gotta get along with people. I might have hugged the guy, but he's my guy, you know? Doesn't mean that I'm different from you guys. Doesn't mean that anything's changed. Just showing some affection, da-da-da. And at the end of it, it was just ignorance, because everybody in the crowd was crying, laughing, having a good time. They were just applauding him. And when he finished singing, he was just like, you can just see in his face, like, that took anything out of him, you know what I mean? Like, it was so passionate. And I just love that, man. Like, that's what's important to me. It's like being true to who you are in spite of what the people around you feel, because normally that comes from a place of fear.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't want to be stuck in that, you know? So my whole life, I feel like, was just like a journey of contradicting the norm as well, you know, like not living to the standards of what was around me, you know what I mean? I had to always challenge it and to look for more, because it wasn't placed in front of me. You know, I didn't go to a school where it was like, hey, you want to go on a trip to Europe or whatever. It's like this when you graduate. There was none of that, man. It was no, access. There was no freedom. It was just like, you want opportunity, go look for it, create it, and I'm blessed to have my family, I'm blessed to have like the people that were in my life, because they definitely guided me, and yeah, man, like it's just...
Oh, it seems incredibly important to you to hold true to your roots.
Yeah.
But with a confidence that you understand that there's going to be a number of factors that get in your way.
Definitely.
That could undermine how you present yourself and sort of maybe want you to move back into a secure zone of self and not deal with it anymore.
Society does that to you,
or change yourself to be more acceptable in a way.
Yeah.
I get the impression from the short period of time that I've known you is that you understand that side of things, but you won't compromise on, no, this is who I am.
Yeah.
This is because this built who I am, what my upbringing, but I want to be able to channel that for people to understand and to perceive as a way to conglomerate and bring other people into the situation, and galvanize those that may have come from a similar background as yourself. Would I be right in saying that, or is that
No, I think you're right. You're right. I mean there's always more to everything, you know what I mean? But you are right. Yeah. I just want to be somebody who... We live in society, bro, where it's like, something strange or different and people see it, it's like, don't do that. I've had friends who told me, like, when I went to a public space that I always went to, and like, for example, if I went to, just randomly, if I went to Hunter's, right? And I saw a waitress or a waiter, and I spoke to them in a certain kind of way and made them laugh or asked them something, or just a bit different in how I handle something. I've had friends who told me, "Oh, don't do that. That's not right. That's not how they do it around here." And it's like, why is my friend complaining to me about something that they don't do around here when the waitress or waiter himself laughed and had a good time and walked? You know what I mean? It's like,
yeah.
So we're so trapped in this way of being that we don't even allow our friends sometimes or other people to act in a different way because we want to correct them, right? We don't see where they're coming from when they're acting. All we know is like, that's not how it's done.
Yeah,
right?
it's
and we're gonna put that to a stop. And that happened so much to me here in Canada, man. Like one thing I feel about Canada, it's like there's not a freedom here that I'd like to feel.
Yeah.
I feel like most people here live kind of like reserved, and I can't do that, man. Like I can't. Like even with my family back home, bro. Like I was that one who was going out when my mom told me not to go.
Yeah.
And not like I disobeyed my mom, right? But Haitian parents, man, they're a bit too protective, right? And there were some times where I had to disobey my mom to get ahead. Like for example, my parents didn't want me to engage in like dancing, right? Like breakdance, all this kind of stuff that I do now, right? Like they never wanted me to engage in that because they thought it would take me away from my education, from schooling and stuff like that. When in the end, it was because of breakdance that brought me to theater that allowed me to get scholarships then to go to school, to go to New York, to come to Canada. And so if I were to listen to my parents, my parents couldn't pay for school. Mm-hmm. If I were to listen to my parents, not only would I have still been in the Bahamas, but I couldn't afford school, man. Like they could. It was that moment in my life where I was like, wow, you know what I mean? Like if I actually listened to my parents, it would have been so bad for me. You know what I mean? Like in this moment, I realized that my parents were ignorant. You know what I mean? Like not like bad. I'm not using the word ignorant as in like you're ignorant. You know what I mean? Like you're. I'm just saying like they didn't have this. They weren't aware of what I was aware of, right? Mm-hmm. And that's kind of on me too, right? Because maybe I should have took the time to kind of break it down and explain to my parents what I was doing.
In hindsight, of course.
You see what I'm saying, right? But at the same time, they didn't trust me. They didn't see me as a person at my level who had an understanding of like, okay, what is this guy doing? Like, okay, he's going to FedEx. He's like sending mail to like, get his visa.
Yeah.
He's going to theater. They couldn't see me plotting in my mind, thinking about like how I want to get off the island for school. They didn't see any of that because I never took the time to actually show my parents my thought process. Yeah. It was just always like an argument. Like it was always just like I want to go to dance. I want to do this. I don't want to do engineering no more. It's just like an argument, right? But we never. You see what I'm saying? I didn't come from like a conversation understanding. Like let's break down. Why are you doing this? Da 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 da. My parents weren't like that, right? My parents weren't. They didn't finish school. My parents weren't educated,
right?
At that high level of extent. And I'm not saying that caused anything, bro. My parents are like the smartest. Like I love them the most. They're the most amazing. They raised me well. They raised 10 children. And we're all good in a neighborhood that was full of corruption and drugs and death and violence. Depths of the ghetto. You know what I mean? Susie Connor back in the Bahamas, bro. Woo! Fun place still too, though. You know what I mean? Still a fun place to grow with all my friends and just the freedom in the streets, but still dangerous. But for them to raise us the way they did, man, and for what they had, it's a miracle. And I gotta say, they are amazing parents, for what they did. And yeah, man, that led us to have the freedom to, I guess, like, to experiment and to seek out opportunities to find knowledge, right? Because if it wasn't for them, it wasn't for their guidance and teaching us, like, so much emotional intelligence too. I find, like, growing up in the hood, like, you gotta have so much emotional intelligence around.
And when we mean by emotional intelligence is like being able to understand nuances and ranges of interaction and various emotions that can be portrayed or expressed.
Like, for example, right, the other day I had somebody invite me out for a car ride around the country after already treating me to, like, breakfast, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But only one person at the table invited me out for the car ride.
Right.
But I realized that the other person at the table wasn't so with that. I think that they were they were already done with me after the breakfast. When I say done with me, I don't mean like done with me. I mean, like, you get to a point where you've had enough of company. You just kind of want to move on, right?
Yep.
And just to be a bit more clear, it was like this gentleman and his wife, right? So his wife offered me to go on the drive, right? And I could tell, like, she probably did that spontaneously without checking with her husband. But because I have emotional intelligence, I was able to perceive and pick up that her husband wasn't with that. And so I was like, first I was like, yeah, you know what? Maybe I should go to the country, And after I said that, I kind of like just feeling the vibe, and I saw his expressions. I saw, like, just like the movements on his, just picking up these things. And I said, you know what? I got some stuff to do. Maybe I shouldn't go. And I could just tell, like, how he was like, Luke, if you got some stuff to do. He was encouraging. He didn't, like, say, oh, no, come. Yeah. So I could have just looked at him and tell, like, he didn't want me. So you got to be smart. And I'm able to, like, pick that up off of people very quick and easy. People can't be fake around me.
Sure.
Right?
I mean, you read the situation and changed your actions accordingly.
Yes.
What if there was an element of truth in his wanting you to be there at the start rather than just politeness?
Yeah.
So rather than just an etiquette. But in a way, he was crying out for some convincing.
Yeah.
So devil's advocate would say that you picked up on it, but then you got to the truth of the matter in some way.
Exactly.
And he says, well,
But without saying it. Right?
Yeah.
And without making anybody feel... Because, man,
Yeah.
there's so many situations where people say stuff. You know what I mean? It's like some things don't need to be said. Like, are you emotionally intelligent enough to get through a situation without hurting somebody's feelings? You know what I mean? And maybe that's just wisdom, right? I call it emotional intelligence. Was just like, I've been through enough experiences and I've lived in situations that taught me how to survive and how to understand without words, you know what I mean? And in Haitian culture, it's interesting. In Haitian cultures, your parents talk to you so much through expressions. Like, if you did something bad, you just get this gaze, you know what I mean? Or this quietness. And it's like, you have to learn how to just know from what you see.
Right.
And
right. Well, just sorry to jump in, but I would be interested to think, because seeing as you've come from a film background as well, for your studies. Do you think that's something that might be missing from contemporary fiction when it comes to the moving picture?
Big time.
The lack of use of those emotional qualities that can be sort of perceived.
100%. I'm going to throw it back to you too, though, right? You're a photographer.
Yeah.
You're a photographer, right? So you understand how important it is to, like, be able to know more with less.
Right.
See what I'm saying?
Yep.
So it's like, it's the same thing with people. It's like, how could you know more about what somebody's feeling? And, like, what more does a woman want from a man than to be understood without her telling him what?
Yeah.
And that's in everybody to an extent. You know what I mean? But I just like using human relationships as a model, like in business and in everything we do. Because I think if we can see the human relationship in these models that we're creating, then we can get a whole lot more efficient and a whole lot more, like, we can be a whole lot more aware of how we're affecting people in processes and in just even, like, basic conversations, like, just like what relationship matches this model of business or the system or this or whatever we're doing this discussion. Like, what model of relationship can we best reflect it in building this model that will cause it to be ethical?
Right.
Yeah. So it's like, I find when I do that, if I can just find the relationship that I need to, like, model something off, it allows me to, like, have a really, really good experience.
But you also would need to rely on people having a certain level of emotional intelligence to understand, to be able to pick up on this intuitively.
Yeah.
And would you, a question for you, do you think maybe that emotional intelligence in the average individual has actually been relegated or is less than it may have been before, say, like the technological revolution, the the arena where we communicate virtually
100%,
rather than face to face.
100%. I can walk on the road and I can have like old people come to me and tell me like, kids these days don't even know how to communicate anymore, have conversations. It's like emotional intelligence gives you the ability to have conversations, because then you're aware. You're so aware, you know what's going on.
Well, there's an element of truth there, isn't it? Even though you collect a lot of information very quickly from like micro expressions, from like a particular stance. There are truths in the sense that tells you about somebody very, very quickly. You're funneling in a story about that person quickly. And it goes back to what we were saying about the expression, like artistic expression. Whereas if it's just in a closed loop, then it appears really abstract to everyone else, and you just make up your own interpretations. Yeah. So you're not getting, you're not extracting real intention or truth in that aspect. So if you're living in a society that doesn't nurture the idea of emotional intelligence for you to tap into those understanding of those truths that a network between people or bounce back, then you get into this terrain of maybe interpreting the wrong intention, the wrong action.
We don't live in a society that really, I mean, I can't really say that, right? Because then you put everything into one. I don't want to say that. What I'm trying to say is, like, I feel like we don't live in an economy, right, that is really aware of the emotional intelligence and those expressions. And I say that because you can look at marketing, right, for example. And marketing doesn't care about emotional intelligence. All marketing cares about is, like, how can we activate a want in somebody? That's what marketing today is, right? It's not about, like, they don't need that, you know what I mean? But how can we activate a want in them? And so living in a society where everything is like about activating want and not what you need is so corrupt. Yeah. Right? Because it's gonna take money. It's gonna make, people are gonna be broke. People are gonna buy things they don't want. People are gonna, like, like, people always tell you, like, what you want isn't what you need. Like, you hear it all your life from your parents, this and that. Oh, you just want that. Oh, you like that girl. I know you care about her, but she's not good for you.
But those wants can become needs over time. That's the thing. It's like the customization.
But you see, they can become needs in good and bad ways too, right? They could be good needs, as in, like, okay, like, maybe you didn't know you needed that and you just wanted, but now you realize you really do need it. But also it could be like an addiction, Yeah. And it was something you just wanted, but now you end up needing it and you're addicted, right? So it's like, if you're talking about it that way, then yeah, I could agree with you.
So what are you all about? What's going on with you on the island?
Geez, what do I reveal? What do I not reveal? I guess, like, there's something I don't want to, like, tell them just yet. So I'm just fucking around.
Yeah, but that can come later.
On PEI, like, I'm an artist. You know what I mean? I want to create. I want to do film. I want to do theater. I'd like to get into like placemaking. Like, I just want to create. I want to work with different creators on the island. I want to work with people who are in trades to just give back more to the island creatively. So a project I'm working on right now is an event team called PETE, the Prince Edward Event Team. And the whole idea about that is just, like, getting creatives together, right, to approach different situations. Like, there might be something on PEI that has, well, for example, look at the Jack Frost Festival, right? Or the Winter Festival, stuff like that goes on PEI. And these things are things that are done year to year, the exact same way every single time. And what that shows me is, like, there's nothing new on the inside. There's nobody influencing how it goes on the inside, right? And you have people on PEI who've moved here from Montreal, Vancouver, Toronto, Germany, Russia, who have experienced winter in the city in a different way. They might have ideas that could contribute to the city and that could increase, or that would benefit the social economy here, right? Help people to, like, have a better time. And I think that's not, like, capitalized on enough, So what I want to do is basically just, like, start a company where we can empower people to just be creative. Like, all people can be creative, like, right. What are the ideas that are out there? So it's just, like, you're just doing a bunch of, like, joint ventures with different people, creating, building, and just having a community of creatives on PEI who want to see the place really diversify and accept diversity.
Right.
And not, like, wash out the culture that's here, right? But instead, like hip hop, right? Like how hip hop comes in and complements a culture, like how it would come into a country and you would take samples from music or you would take artwork samples from paintings that already exist in this place, and then you would just use that urban culture, the way they create music and stuff, to just intensify, wrap it up, make it a bit more enjoyable to youth, and to different people who have that spark of creativity, who just want more. And that's what I want to do. I just want to.
Yeah, creativity is an all-encompassing term for what you're talking about. But creativity means something different to everyone. Yeah.
Yeah, it does.
And we tapped into Van Gogh's creativity. So like train of thought, self-expression, not necessarily about sort of appealing to a new agenda or defining new terms for people to live their life or whatever. But this is the thing. I mean, what's interesting I find about like anyone talking about creativity and creative fields is that are they coming from a deeply personal perspective, or one that looks at the way that something new that's born that comes from either an individual or collective connects to the heritage of a place, the people that from that sort of particular arena, the traditional arena. So reflecting on the past, but also taking consideration the present and what sort of galvanizing influences there are to spread certain ideas or creations, and then the future, how that might change the way that we sort of collaborate and understand once we've perceived the new creations, what it means to changing societies. Because we're living in a world now where there's so many different perspectives, so many different sort of convergence of opinion
that all come from a source, though.
That come from a source, yeah.
It's like thought leaders, right? Like there are thought leaders in the world, people who've created philosophies, and now like we even the way we're creative is based on like another person's model. Yeah. So it's like, for me, true creativity is like digging past all of that. You know what I mean? And I understand like nothing's new under the sun or whatever else, but it's like, how can you move past so much that you've learned, both things that inhibit you, right? Right, like your fears, for example. Like, what are you afraid of? What's holding you back from like really unleashing your true creative potential? And also, what do you need? What do you need to actually help you? What are the tools that you physically need to help you in achieving your creative potential? And if to get into that even, right, it's like, are the tools you're using or are the tools that are currently created even the tools, like, is there something else? Like, I don't want to bound people, and I don't want people to like end up being bounded by what we have. It's like, for example, a camera, right? A camera is a tool that somebody made. We know that the Canon series, after year, it's going to update your film. You're going to update your lenses. Film's going to get more crisp and more crisp. And one day, who knows what we'll be able to do with like media, right? And what I'm trying to get to with this is like, the tools that we have are limited tools in themselves. You know what I mean? They don't transform. We're the ones who can adapt. So that's all the more reason for us to make sure that we are as free and as full in our potential as we can possibly be, because then we can like use these tools beyond what somebody has before, kind of thing, right? It's like we are the ones who are limitless, right? Not things we work with. And an
inherent trait of the human position is that we can connect to seemingly unconnectable things together over and in respect to the social economy, through discussion, through open dialogue. Because you tapped into this before, this idea of like harmony, allowing for the greatest efficiency of creativity, in the sense that you can be on the same wavelength and allow for sort of like a flourishing of ideas.
Yes.
Because flourishing of ideas maybe comes with the impact that they can be reified, they can be put into practice. Everyone's working together for a shared principle. So, but that's but when we face the difficulties in the terms of how that starts, because with the individual, we kind of like to sort of build a defense mechanism or security of belief, maybe, that says that sees creativity as change which can affect my secure position for the negative. So it's like we can get past this idea that things change for a negative impact on my own well-being, rather than being able to discuss the potential and to look at and not predict, but to sort of escalate how something changes and how it impacts us in the future, and share those ideas and those philosophies.
So you're saying,
doesn't
like,
it better? Well, it better stabilizes. It better prepares us for the future, because we're discussing that aspect.
Okay, exactly. So you're saying like there's room to correct any kind of issues that could be present if you discuss it, if you start having discussions.
They need to come out into the open, don't they?
I see. That's true. That's true. No, I think you're right. I think that through discussion you can definitely like, sort out what will work and what wouldn't work and what's more necessary at this point in time, like with ideas and with creativity. I think that people in the society we live in, creativity is something that's given to everybody, right? It's not something that one person has, and we were talking about this earlier too, right? It's like creativity isn't something unique. In fact, it's being more natural, right? And I think it's really accepting that, because normally inside the workplace, when somebody poses a new idea, what we're quick to do is shut it down. In fact, we'd even get mad at somebody for showing us a new way of doing stuff, right? Now I've been in a situation where I've proposed something to like to a senior, and they'd be like, "That's not the way we do it," and I'm like, okay, but I know the way we do it. What I'm proposing is this is an easier way to do it and better, and I just figured this out from watching you guys, right? And people think like, oh, when somebody does something like that, they just thought of that idea. But that's not even true. Like, even if they just thought of that idea, the reason they were able to just think of that idea was because of their upbringing, maybe. It was because of them studying biology. You know what I mean? And in biology, they studied osmosis, and they realized something, and they had like a fascination about osmosis. And now in the workplace, they can kind of see like how the concept of osmosis is working between employees. And so I really believe that transferable skills, life experiences, an individual in themselves, the way they think, their thought processes, somebody might be able to come up with a solution, and that's creativity in an instant. And you could have been toiling with it for year after year, but it's not saying that they figured it out easy. It's just saying that it took them 15 years of life experiences and education and doubt and fear and pain, maybe, I don't know, to figure something out a lot quickly. So creativity, like you said, is a buzzword, but people really need to like give creativity its credit. Like, I think creativity takes away from how powerful and how much goes into somebody. Creativity comes from the word creation, right? Like, to create is powerful, man. And to create, I think you need a lot of power.
But creation also means like change as well.
Definitely.
Inextricably. But you were talking about analogously to figuratively to biology and osmosis. But
like just the concept of it, right?
Yeah, but
like
you
taking concepts and seeing them applied in different, because it's biology and it's osmosis, but the what's happening in osmosis, like just that process, if you just like
but that's true. But I mean, that's on a cellular level, the concepts available, that abstract is really interesting as a metaphor creativity. But at the same time, we as like in the macro scale, how we perceive world, everything actually is fairly predictable. We see predictable events unfolding. And if you tie it into sort of like the idea of evolution, change in some respect is only valued over time. And if it only benefits an organism at that moment over anything else, and the other organism to allow for the flourishing of like a particular mutation. But the mutation normally doesn't help. It doesn't allow for a sudden epiphany. It's only realized over a long period of time with hindsight that was a benefit. And that's interesting because we perceive that like changes, I think, by default as being sort of a negative thing, as harmful.
And then when time passes and you see the benefits, like, okay, now we're going to adopt that.
That's right, exactly.
It's just like art though, right? Like artists, like it's strange how people are just like that, man. People are just like that. It's like, you can be an artist, you can create good work, and as long as you're alive and you're around, you're producing it so quick and you're giving the idea, they don't want it. But the moment you perish, you come to a place where it's like, all right, it's super valuable. We want it now. We're going to heed their thought. And I don't know what brings people to this place of like really opening up to like a person's opinion or an idea after they've passed or after they've fallen. I don't know why people are like that.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, right? And it kind of shows me that maybe people just don't want to listen. Like maybe we're just so fixed in our ways that we just aren't comfortable with accepting creativity. Maybe creativity is creativity is harmful, to people. That's how they perceive it, right? Because it's a shift in,
because we have the ability to look at the cause and effect relationship of like a change, but it's normally has a bias towards the worst case scenario or a negative. impact. Like when people perceive the immigration impacting them individually as being an overwhelming negative thing, while overlooking the plethora of benefits to that not just the economy but the livelihood, the predominating culture of that area in terms of sustaining it over the long term, preparing it for a future which is actually always changing, especially when it's addressing it in a sort of like parallel path to technology and how that's advancing at an exponential rate.
How do you prepare for a future that's always changing?
That's a really good question. That's a really good question. But
do you build an expectation of what you think will be?
Well, in a mathematical level, change is happening all the time. Like, it's just our flawed perception that there's predictabilities and there's that we fall into safety nets and have belief systems that want to preserve a certain way of thinking, a way of looking at things. But everything is in a state of flux, and if we ignore that at our peril, because it blindsides us to technology which is advancing and has the potential to begin like dictating terms of our own environmental status as human beings.
It already does.
Understanding us more than we understand ourselves, for one. That's an interesting idea, but it's also like, you can say it's a catastrophic one. So maybe I'm falling into the trap as well, looking at the worst case scenario.
I'm telling you. You know what's interesting, man? It's like I was talking to somebody, or talking about like how much stuff like our cell phones replace, for example, in our lives, right? Like, like it's become such an intimate tool. It's become like a calendar. It's become an alarm clock. It's become a reminder. It's become the messaging tool. It's become like the birthday sender. It's become so much stuff that it's actually like changing the way we communicate. It's changing like our abilities to communicate. And like this guy came to the Eastlink Center a while back, and he was talking about like new industries and new businesses popping up. And he's talking about like how when GIFs came out, for example, right? How like, the company Jiffy came, and like, this created more business and more work for people. But at the same time, because GIFs came out, it was taking away even more from people verbally communicating. Right? And it's like, we're sacrificing all of these for social innovation in terms of technology. We're sacrificing like the actual face-to-face relationship with people, and
maybe there's a lack of confidence of being able to articulate yourself through the traditional language.
Exactly. People actually.
If you look at it, like, we're trying to simplify the tools that we have available to us in common language. We, even for like, think about short form through texting, where everything's like abbreviated to sort of, or abstracted, so
LOL.
you can just just communicate the very core, like principles or whatever. And the same with like memes, that they house a more complex. Like message, shared
thought. Like memes literally target people who, it's like one person made this meme up and they found something funny and they shared it, and if it blows up, memes are an indication of the shared thought of a collective group of people. You know what I mean? Like, they find that funny if they relate to it. It's like, that's an indication. That meme blow it up. It's like, pay attention to that. Right. Like that's a survey, man. Like a meme, if it blows up, can be like a survey. That can show you, like, okay, what do people laugh at around here? You know what I mean? What's that meme that blew up around here? Okay, this meme, everybody's liking this. Everybody knows this meme. Look at the likes on this kind of thing. Okay, we can create media. We can kind of use this as our foundation. I'm not saying to do that. That's a weak foundation to build something on a meme. I'm just saying, like, use it as an indication in which direction you want to go. Right? It's like, so that's something too.
See, that's interesting as well, because memes they can be incredibly varied, and they can break away from the classical idea of what it means to tell a story, for example. And we're very much like anchored to the classical mythological realm of storytelling. You see it in modern day cinema, where you can take a handful of films and then find a common denominator that takes you to like a classical hero story, for example.
Exactly.
And you've just spent 2 hours watching pretty much this, from all those themes, the same sort of core principle, core story. Whereas memes kind of like, instead of telling you a fully fledged story, which has a start and end point clearly defined, it's like a motivation, or like a little snapshot of something that you extends to something else, maybe. Or do you think it is encapsulates something?
It's like a familiar action and reaction.
So
you know,
like almost like a. All right. Okay. Yeah.
it's
And I get sense
or
there's somewhat of a parody as well of that.
yeah,
perception.
like or almost like it's like a familiar situation,
Right. Yeah.
and then like how the masses react to it collectively,
Right.
and then
Yeah.
and then the more we see people share this meme, the more we feel it's like us sharing this meme or relating to this meme
Reinforcing.
shows us that there's others like us. This is trending. Other people find this funny.
Oh, it's
it's
a social experiment.
It is.
You can
That's
throw
what
out a
I'm
meme
saying.
that seems so strange and weird that then suddenly there's 15 people that have shared it and said this is awesome, and you realize, oh my god,
Wow.
people are sharing as a kind of a share of thought, whether it be it's esoteric or just weird.
Exactly. So I think honestly, man, like companies should like aim to figure out how can they make a meme. You know what I mean? How can we make a meme each as a company that affects our market collectively, that has that impact as well, right? Because like that's important. That shows you so much, you know? So like that's like I don't know, man. Like there's a lot that people aren't paying attention to that can teach us so much.
Yeah.
And that they take for granted, right? Because if I walk into these businesses, I'm like, hey, I want to make a meme for you. Here's what I'm gonna do. We're gonna make a few of them. We're gonna like test which ones are getting like the most likes and shares and stuff like that. When we hit that meme, that kind of just like blows up. We know we've done that right thing, and then okay, this is the collective thought. This is like what this customer base finds funny or what they want to share to encourage a cause or something like that. You know, it's like, you see, that's what the world we're moving into. I think, you know. I think that's like how marketing is going to change in the future. People are going to get a whole lot more like.
It's a double-edged sword though as well,
yeah,
because it's like memes literally appeal to short attention spans too.
But that's the point. That's what we're going into, short attention span world, you know? Like
Well, we're already there.
Oh, we're there right now.
For sure.
I think so.
So
just a bit.
And they shouldn't be and again it's like searching for rewards too.
Yeah.
It's like, I get it. I get the abstract.
And that's the reward.
That other person's thinking.
And that's the reward, exactly. I can relate. You know, like, I can relate. That's, I don't know, it's that familiar feeling, right?
I mean, I was going back to like traditional stories and referencing them in like modern cinema, I guess. I didn't give any exact examples, but I mean, you can draw correlations from things like the Harry Potter films comparing to Lord of the Rings films. You know, the strong, good and evil, binary hero stories with actors. And when I say actors, I mean like archetypal personalities that you can see in multiple different films. Like the sage, the wise, the wizard, in Gandalf and Dumbledore, and the hero that goes through a number of different transitions on his path to change the state of play and come out on the other side all nice and neatly wrapped up with Harry Potter and Aragorn. And those are just two examples. I mean, and they are in the fantasy realm, so they're very much tied to like the obvious idea that there's a classical story that permeates through the ages. But that's not enough anymore, and we know that's not enough because if you look at what happened with the Game of Thrones series, you realize that people didn't want things wrapped up in a neat classical way. Because
Game of Thrones was Game of Thrones. It challenged the norms so much already.
But why did you think it did that? How did it did that? What were the mechanics available to the writer in this J.R. Martin that he what do you think he was thinking at that stage?
As he challenged, as he wrote scenes that he knew people would react like.
What do you think he was just playing on the fact that we would be easily blindsided because we're expecting something a certain way, so we were surprised, and that's what garners the interest.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
we follow it along.
Exactly, and you can see that same concept in shows like Black Mirror and stuff too, right? That are more about making people think, what if, or like these like people are understanding now, and it's interesting because this is what theater did, right? That's what theater did. Yeah. Theater, the whole point of theater was making people. No, of course, man. So theater, the whole point of theater, that's what they did, right? Theater was originally created to kind of teach people and show people what could be, or challenge them to think. It wasn't such an educational tool in the past where like today it's all about like comedy and laughing or seeing a love story. Like theater back in the day was more about like what's going on socially around us. You see what I'm saying? And how can we use this artistic tool to show people and challenge people? And so now you got people inside the film industry and different industries learning and being like, okay, like people want to be challenged now. I mean, people don't want to see a good love story anymore. People want to see reality. People want to see something else. You know what I mean? That like You have people now, man, like getting involved with how can I even put this? Like, you have more people getting involved with less developed cultures because they want more authentic experiences. You know what I mean? Like, people are falling out of that whole mainstream thing now, and more shows are coming out that are like literally challenging people's psychology. It's like pushing them to like think more. And I think that's the direction that we want to move in, right? Because we're living in a world where so much is like pushed on us that we need now to like challenge people and show them how it is or what could be, you know. And
so I guess if you are asking the question, what if, through these mechanisms, like theatre showed what is,
or what could be if we don't change, like, you know what I'm saying,
right? But also, and then throw in sort of ideas or concepts that don't fit into the traditional, I guess, into a very tight, easy remit, one that's been established.
Exactly.
But then does that make, by the aspect of you thinking about potential outside of yourself, doesn't that has to feed back into then start thinking about what you think about the world and how you perceive yourself? So you're learning something through that sort of cycle, and maybe that's important for, you know, development of your own individual, your own person.
I would say in that cycle of development of your person, though, like whether you, okay, there's this book I read called like The Ethical Imperative, right? And whether you're putting your own thoughts through like an ethic check, or you have somebody else you can talk to, or, you know, maybe like, you know, I'm a man of faith, so I put my own thoughts through like my spirituality, right? There are certain things I just don't want to do because it doesn't line up with my faith.
Right.
And so I have this filter, and it goes like, you know, Luke, I want to do something, I'm excited, I decided to do it, but does Luke want to do it, right? And I have my own morals, so I say yes or no to that, right? Then it moves on. You know, then I think, okay, now, but does this even allow me, like, does this work with my spirituality? Like, am I contradicting God? Am I, you know, like spitting in his face kind of when I make this choice? Okay, this is a pass, I move forward, you know? And then I normally get to a point where I like ask friends for their opinions and stuff like that, and I share it, you know, and I put some deep thought into, watch a lot of videos, research. That's another shift for me. Boom. And then I have the confidence, okay, let's do it. You know, like, I'm not somebody who just like does stuff. Like, you know, like I my faith restrains me from doing certain things, and I wouldn't host an event, for example, that promoted sex in any kind of way, like adamantly, you know, like I wouldn't sell booze proudly, like, you know what I mean? I'd be like, drink responsibly kind of thing, but there are certain things that I can't do because of my ethics and filters I've kind of placed on myself, or that my own upbringing is kind of placed on me. I accepted them because I want to be that way.
No.
But you need those things as humans, you know. If you just do stuff and you're not, if you have no ethical imperative of your own, that where you challenge yourself, I feel like you're likely to put stuff into the world that normally fall apart. Let me just put it that way, right? That won't last as long because you don't have that research, that background. You didn't talk about your event. You didn't, you know, sit down and meditate about it, and that leads to something not being as sincere. It doesn't come from a place as, and people feel that, you know, when something comes from a place that's really close to you, you know, when you've actually like considered something, like put a lot of thought into it, and that gives you peace as well, right, in what you're doing. And I think that helps a lot in this world. And I hope that people would, you know, a lot of people are doing it, I think they're not even aware, but I do hope that we can move into where people are like aware of like this thing, like let me hold myself accountable for my thoughts, for how I think, for the words I'm putting into the world. You know what I mean? Like what are the things in my life? Who are the people in my life? What are the teachings that I know that can filter out anything that could bring harm to what I'm offering to society? You know?
It's interesting the way you frame it, because you admit that you are a man of faith. So does that mean that you and I think you were sort of like getting to that earlier, that you already have a predefined structure, but then you evaluate different scenarios as they come to your perception over time, whether that's through you know, communication with others, there's another viewpoint, perception that you then to start to integrate into this system that you have structured around you. Now, and the metaphor would be like if you imagine like a jigsaw puzzle. You start off with nothing. It's just like a blank slate. Yeah. But you're inevitably building something that already existed and just making it obvious to everyone else. Whereas this idea that you already have defined a structure of belief, so your faith. You start off with like the frame of the puzzle. and then you put bits in over time.
But they have to fit.
But they
Some
have
pieces-
to fit, yes.
Some pieces won't.
And there's going to
Exactly.
be, and that's right. But instead of just having the jigsaw puzzle that with everything in the box,
Exactly.
it's actually all boxes of jigsaw puzzles that have ever been made, and you've got to find the bits that fit into that sort
Exactly.
of predefined structure.
Well, now, what does that create as well, right? That also creates individualism, doesn't it? Because now I'm creating something. Now I'm going about finding those pieces on my own. I'm not relying on a pre-designed piece. You know, I'm not a template. I'm not doing something based on how it was already done before. You know, just in me challenging myself, I'm forced to move into a place of uniqueness. You know, because you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do.
So that's the interesting part about that for me as well, right? It's like you don't do things naturally. You don't do things the way the world has done them because you're not doing it as the world. Period. That's why, right? So it's like
It's a matter of scale. Yeah. Oh man.
So that's how I live my life. You know. So and I believe that those pieces show themselves. You know, what I mean, you meet people, you talk to people, and it just works, man. You know, it takes a bit more time. We talked about this too, right? Like, I think that you have to transition into it. You know, like, and it'll take time to find those pieces, man, because you need those experiences. You know, you
It does,
need the
but it's a
frustration.
matter of scale as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
So the amount of pieces available are only as large as that you're willing, and this is the paradox, the irony of it is that you're willing to believe exist. Yeah. So you could formulate this jigsaw puzzle frame and then say that, well, I've only got 2 other boxes where there are other jigsaw puzzles where I can take my bits from.
Exactly. So
Rather
it's like,
than infinite amounts, or like
exactly. But that's how you need to think. People don't think in abundance, right? Like as human beings, normally we think in like the scarcity mindset. Like, you know, we don't have enough. It's not going to work that way. It's like, nah, man, if this didn't work out, you can do it this way. It's like our ideas, like everybody's ideas in the world, man. Like it's scalable. You know, you can make it as big and as small as possible. It all depends on like the capacity of like these pieces that you're interacting with. You know, it's like I can have a business plan, right? And I can present it to, or no, you know what? Let me do something else. I can have an online type of, for example, Airbnb, right? Airbnb could have just been Charlottetown based, right? And it could have been that way forever. But it was designed with the capacity to grow, right? He or whoever owns the company, they can grow it. Now Airbnb is a market you can take from Charlottetown to Moncton to Toronto to the Bahamas. You know what I mean? And it has no limit. It's scalable. You can grow it. And I think people need to be aware of like, what's the capacity for your idea scalability? You know what I mean? Like, who are the other people in the world that could benefit from your idea? It's
well,
like,
do you know it does have limits? And this is an interesting thing about how it runs in our modern age is that these ventures, Airbnb, seemed like virtuous like utility for everyone.
Yeah.
It wasn't until it reached the threshold where it really started to impact social issue, like the like social localizations, like in PEI, for example. The fact that short-term rentals facilitated by Airbnb is displacing those who are generally trying to live and work in a downtown area on frugal means, and then their position is undermined.
You know,
But my point being is that we only start to question the philosophies of a system like this until it's already become a structure that's very difficult to dismantle. Airbnb is not going to go away because of those issues, but that's something that we didn't preconceive beforehand and understand the potential of it as it was being birthed. As it was becoming, we were so biased towards the positive impact. And look what's happening at the moment.
100%. Airbnb is like they capitalize on the economy they're in, though, right? So like Airbnb wouldn't work in the Bahamas, for example, is what I'm saying, right? Because I mean, it would work, but it wouldn't be as abundant, you know, like, and that's because first of all, like in the economy in the Bahamas, nobody from the Bahamas is going to go around like paying money to rent somebody else's home, right? So it's like these businesses actually like they're, man, I don't want to say that, but anyway, they're like viruses, right? They need hosts. So like these businesses, like they need an economy to thrive off. Well, that kind of is like a virus, right? Because it's like it's taking the money from the economy and stuff like that, but. Wow, that's such an idea. Isn't that something? Some businesses can be viruses, Dread. You know what I mean? Like some businesses that don't contribute as much as they're taking back, wouldn't that technically make it a virus? Like think about it, right? You're existing in an economy, right? And you're a part of it. If this was like a living being, I remember talking about relationships and stuff. If you were like a living being or like a body, and your business was contributing to like a certain aspect of this the economy, both like financially and the social aspect and different stuff like that, and you were like harvesting, but you were taking more than you were giving back, then technically you're a virus. Technically, like economically, the balance is off scale, you know? And I love looking at life like economics too, right? It's like with everything we do, and if people think something like Airbnb could have been successful with no harm, they're crazy. You know, I tell people all the time, man, it's like everything is like economics.
So you take a position to start off with. If you apply the metaphor of viral, it being virus, being a virus, that any sort of new birth is in the economy, in a way, either has the potential of a virus or it is a virus. You believe that it is a virus, then you start to say, okay, now let's look at the implications. Let's look 10 years down the line at what this means. Or what are the logic, the reasonable offshoots of how this could develop over time. Because then at least at that point, you have an ability to change in a direction that you think is more ethical, for example, more like conducive to social
we talked about this before.
change.
What if there was like an ethics board, right, for businesses? And we talked about like how there should be like philosophy students inside businesses and stuff like that as well, right? And that's huge to me. It's something I really believe in. And it's like, how could we introduce that? It's like, okay, Airbnb, big business, we see the capacity for it. This is an online platform. Your intention is to like do this like in multiple countries, different economies. What are the negative effects? And they probably do talk about this, but what I'm saying is like, how do you make this a more mainstream school of thought? Make it like, when I say school of thought, I don't mean like a complete school of thought. I just mean like this one thing. It's like, how can we put businesses or hold them more accountable? Like, how can we like put like this ethical imperative, man? It's like, you need to check and make sure that the implications of your business 10 years down the road isn't going to affect people negatively. Airbnb is something that's really affecting people, man. It's like the housing crisis, people are finding homes, and because you think, I was reading this book, man. The book is called The Town Called Potential. And the people in the town adopted this dragon. I don't know why people adopted a dragon. It wasn't even from there. And the dragon was called mediocrity, right? And so this whole book basically talked about how different characters, they basically embodied characters. I mean, not characters, but they embodied human states with characters. So like mediocrity was a dragon, you know what I mean? Potential was a person, that kind of thing. And this dragon mediocrity, people let in the town, they started feeding him, giving him like, you know, food. He got bigger and bigger over time. And as he got bigger and bigger, it basically represented mediocrity growing bigger and bigger in the town amongst the people. And they would, in the book, they would say basically they got to a point where mediocrity, the dragon, would end up like eating people overnight. Like at nighttime, people would actually start disappearing because the dragon would eat them. You know, and so mediocrity was basically infecting the town. People became less and less aware of their potential in a town called Potential. And so it was really, really cool, right? And
that's amazing.
I know, it's a really cool book, man. It blew my mind. I read it in one day when I got it. And that in itself, that book, the reading of that book opened my mind up to like a different way of thinking, man. It showed me like how people were, like how they fall into like a more secondary level of themselves. You know what I mean? Like they, you know, for real, it's like we give up even like our full names in the society we live in just for the lack of formality. You know what I mean? That we won't have to face. Right? It's like we are simplifying ourselves in innovation when we should be like maximizing ourselves with innovation, because the only thing that's going to make us unique in the world we're moving into is like our individuality. And people need to see that, right? They need to snap out of that mindset of like, you know, that quick thing and realize, okay, the more I invest into myself, the more I know who I am, the more valuable I become to society itself.
Knowing yourself better.
Exactly.
Knowing yourself
you know,
fluidly,
exactly. People don't put the time into it anymore, you know, and that's something in itself. I want to come back to talking about like economics, right? Like, and just talking about relationships, like, because it ties into what I'm going to tell you right now too. But like, for example, when I was talking about reflecting things that people do, like in relationships, like if I was with a girl, right, and I was giving her all my attention, but she wasn't giving me any, right? Economics talk about supply and demand, for example, right? If I'm supplying too much to her and she's not demanding it even, then she has too much, right? And what's going to happen in the market or in her heart is my value is going to go down to her, because like there's too much supply. There's too much supply and there's not enough of what I'm giving her in demand. And so how do you create demand, right? You create demand by showing them that other people are interested in you. You create demand by showing them that you're not there all the time, right? So you show yourself as not being as expendable, right? You're not as expendable, you're not infinite. And so by reducing how much you are, you create a need in the market. And so it's like, I tell people all the time, you could like, I take business and I reflect it to life. I take a plant growing, I can reflect it to life. I can see life in everything, you know? But I really like the economy model because it shows you how giving of yourself sometimes isn't always good, right? Like you need to actually reserve some of who you are
Right.
in some situations, I think, right? Because then that creates the need you need to deliver what you actually wanted to, just a thought, right?
So you're applying the principles of growth to the individual.
Yeah, exactly. In economics.
And this given back, this feedback.
It's real.
That
Yeah.
that may be difficult to envisage or perceive if you are. Well, no, actually, no. I mean, from your position, it sounds like you as a personality, you have a tendency to put more out than you get back. Is that what you're saying? Yeah. Whereas, do you think that's a common theme with people in general, or it's something that is more not like exclusive to you, because obviously not exclusive to you.
Of course
but
not.
It's more of a rarity. Because if it is a more of a rarity, to understand that principle and apply it to yourself, allows you to then be more strategic.
Yeah.
For one, it allows you to navigate like society in a way that you realize there is a give and take. There's a cycle that I have elements of control over. So I'm enacting this idea of free will in the sense that I understand there's a deterministic sort of force out there. The deterministic force in this analogy is that supply and demand, if you give too much supply, then your position is undervalued. You become a non-entity in a sense, and not respected as being an equilibrium, being part of that deterministic equilibrium.
Yeah.
But if you understand the terms of the game, the terms of that equilibrium,
then you know when to give.
You know
when best to give.
Like puzzle pieces to put into this
and you know
situation
when best
to give you
give,
maximum.
If you have an understanding of that, then you know that you offering help last week when somebody asked for something wasn't the opportune time. Yeah. But waiting a week and letting them realize that you were the one to count on, and then giving them the help is the opportune time.
Right.
Because last week maybe it would have went underappreciated. You would have supplied it, but the need wasn't realized to the extent that it should have been yet.
Right.
And now it's underappreciated.
Yes.
But now you ask a week later instead, and the need is realized.